Ladies and gentlemen, welcome into Three Men Talking Fantasy Football. I am here with Mr. Anthony Perez and Mr. Thomas Lang. What's going on, gentlemen?
Good. Good evening, good afternoon, good night, whatever you want to call it. I'm so happy my voice doesn't sound like Mickey Mouse right now, so I'm glad to be back.
Yes, sir. And uh,
To have you
and uh,
back. We missed you last week.
that's right.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I would have been talking like this the entire
Yeah,
time, or sound like Mickey. So
right. Well, we were just fine without you, so
sure,
it was
sure you
all
are.
good.
Sure, yeah. Everybody missed me.
For everybody listening in, we are coming to you in the off season. We are in between the divisional round, which just happened, and the and the conference championship games. So a lot of quick stuff to react to before we jump into our main topic, which in this case is top 12 wide receivers from this past year. So some quick reactions from the weekend. I know one game we'll spend a little more time on, but kind of really Commanders really impressed me. They went out and put out 45 points against basically a decimated Detroit Lions defense. Um, I was unbelievably impressed though with basically the entire offense, how everything went. Cliff Kingsbury is unlocking the best out of Jaden Daniels. And we're not even gonna, we're gonna get into some wide receiver talk today, and notably off this list is Marvin Harrison, which we've been lamenting about Kyler Murray. So maybe our issues with Cliff Kingsbury was because of how bad Kyler Murray was for different times. We'll get into that later in the offseason, but irrespective of that, they're unbelievable. The Commanders. I think they have a real shot to upset the Eagles next week. Do you
Yeah, I
guys
agree.
agree?
I agree. I agree. I think honestly, I think the underdogs outside of the underdog of the Commanders take the game if they control the ball like they did against the Lions in the beginning. The Eagles have a better defense than the Lions. I mean, the Lions had 16 players on IR, so I mean, it was bound to happen. Unfortunately, like everybody in this world wanted the Lions to go, but injuries really took play, and I see the Commanders having a really strong shot. I think Jaden Daniels has been playing a lot better than Hurts. When Hurts is basically utilizing his legs, he's getting more of an opportunity to get injured.
Yeah. And just basically to bolster that point, basically the last 2 weeks, the Eagles have won. Obviously, they won in Wild Card Weekend. They won in the divisional round. They have not looked like world beaters the last
No,
two games.
nope.
The Eagles' defense has looked good. Saquon Barkley has looked unbelievable, but that's about it.
Yeah, I mean he's looked unbelievable all season. I mean he's been unbelievable all season.
Right.
No, the
Um,
defense definitely looked a lot better, but again,
And that brings the point,
we'll
though.
see what
I feel
happens.
like if you're going to that game, if you're Washington, I think your sole game plan is to stop Saquon Barkley at all costs and force Hurts to beat you with his arm, which is something that I think he might have a hard time doing, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I mean, if AJ Brown's sitting on the sideline reading a book, I mean, that is going to be very difficult.
I was waiting for him to say that. Um, on the AFC side, we had an unbelievable game. The Ravens versus the Bills. With Mark Andrews dropping the late 2 point conversion. It's funny, like in the playoffs, especially because all the stuff that we do for fantasy football and like how deep we are. I'm watching that game, and all I keep thinking about was Isaiah Likely stock is rising. Isaiah Likely stock is rising. That's all I kept thinking of for the purpose of the game. But it was an unbelievable game. I think that they overplayed. Like if you just listen to the media, they had a minute and 30 seconds left. So even if Mark Andrews scores there, I still think the Bills go down and at least kick the field goal. Like,
Yeah,
so maybe
I
that's
think,
like overdone. Like,
yeah, I think it was a great game. Both games, especially with the inclement weather, both really good, great games. But the Bills, Bills Ravens game, that was so much fun to watch. Any team could have taken that, but obviously the Bills defense really stepped up and really, really, really made some really great plays to get the ball in the hands of Josh Allen. So um, I see the same thing happening this week, and
well,
I know I really hope Do we know what referee crew, Anthony, that's going to be
Uh,
over there?
No, they haven't announced it yet.
Oh, yeah.
After
Well,
after last week's show, they're probably keeping it under wraps.
yeah.
let's just quickly touch on that topic. And for anybody who doesn't know, I made a point to tell both of these gentlemen here that I wanted to just quickly touch on this. So, the Chiefs and the Texans, and the Chiefs in general, and the referees, and this whole narrative. Let me, because if my point wasn't clear, let me just get this across, and I'll get the reaction from you two. I don't. You might be surprised. I don't think that all these calls are legitimate. I don't. But I don't think that the Chiefs are getting any more of these ridiculous quarterback calls than any other team. We know. Let me lay this out. We know that the NFL has been overwhelmingly, for the last 5 to 6, 7, 8 years, been overwhelmingly protecting star quarterback players, because that's how I agree with that. And I know Anthony and I, we've gone back and forth about the money thing. We've been making that point about that they're doing that to protect for money, because these are the faces of the league. They want them to play. They want the teams to play better. I don't think Patrick Mahomes is getting any other special treatment that Josh Allen isn't getting, that Joe Burrow isn't getting, yada down the line.
I mean, did you see that scramble where you knew that Mahomes scrambled to the exact last second where he knew that he was basically gonna, go feet first to give himself up, and it was literally when somebody was about to tackle him,
Yes.
he got the call.
I thought that was a very bad call.
And not only that, but the defenders didn't even hit him.
Right. I'm saying, even given what I just said about the quarterback thing, I still think that was a very bad call.
Troy Aikman, each call, he literally stated, "Oh, come on."
Right. I agree that it was a bad call. What I'm saying is, what quarter did that happen in?
Both of them. The first one was when they were 3-8. It was 3rd and 8, and it was actually they called it helmet to helmet, but the replays showed it was helmet to chest. Clean hit. So, and again, we're here to talk about 1 through 12 of
no. Wait.
But I just want to make it very clear that I let the boys be boys and let the boys play football. This is playoff football.
What I'm saying is, and I want Anthony and Tommy, I want you to answer this. Okay, let's just say, okay, forget what I said. Okay, that's an irrelevant argument to you. Whatever. They're not, according to you, they're not protecting the quarterbacks the same way. They're not protecting teams. Fine. What would be the NFL's incentive to actually vocalize to referees, say, hey, listen, when you can, try to help them out, to help them win? What would be their incentive to do so financially?
Anthony,
I'll give you a perfect
you sent us some information, Anthony. Why don't you enlighten?
Yeah, but before I even get into that, I think the one incentive here, and don't be surprised come Monday, right, where we hear from the NFL that this Chiefs-Bills game is going to be the most watched playoff game ever. Now, what does that generate to, Billy? Money. They're going to make a lot of money off of that game this weekend just because the Chiefs are in that game against the Bills. I guarantee you.
Why are more people my question to you is, you're saying that more people are watching because it's the Chiefs as the name, or because of people that we won't name?
Well, because now everyone's going to want to obviously see the Chiefs get eliminated, right? I think a lot of people, besides Chiefs Kingdom, have had enough about Patrick Mahomes' antics. And listen, it really sucks.
And the Swifties.
And this is what I'll say. If you looked watched the game this past weekend, right? There was a situation where he ran out of bounds and he purposely slowed himself down so that.
He LeBron James himself. LeBron James himself.
Yeah, and he flopped out of bounds.
Right.
I think right there, and I think a lot of other people too lost a lot of respect for him right there, because number one, there's no need for that. Okay, stop with the theatrics. There was way before all this flag football stuff started, or touch football.
And I just to cut you off real quick, I mean,
I agree with you, man.
Josh Allen has done that before, but not to that extreme. Not to that extreme.
But there was a play in the Ravens game where Lamar Jackson literally got hit late out of bounds. Okay, dragged out of bounds. He didn't throw a fit. He didn't throw his arms up in the air. Oh my God, where's the flag? No, that's something only
That,
Mahomes does.
that's
And then
that's the play. That's the play that he went into the kicker's net. I
yeah,
remember. Yeah,
and so he just got up, ran it back to the field, and played ball. He's not looking
yeah.
for a flag. If he got one, great.
I,
And a lot of people say, well, that's where the indifference is, and I get that, but I just think Mahomes is more vocal about it. You know what I mean? Like he makes it a
yes,
point to be like, "Hey, man, this guy came at my knees. You got to throw a flag. This guy
I
touched me with
think
a finger. You got to throw a flag." And it's just getting a little out of hand, if you ask me. Just play
Anthony,
ball, man.
Anthony, I think you're right. I'm not gonna argue about that. I will say that, and I've heard the argument today about maybe it makes him smarter because he's pulling the Brazilian soccer trick where if you flop more, you'll get, and it like meaning it's not like in the NBA now where if you flop too hard, you'll get a penalty. So there's no downside for other than respect, basically, for players doing that crap. So this is not a backhanded way of me giving him credit for look how good you flopped. I think it's ridiculous too. But I think it's part and parcel of this overwhelming, like you can't dance around with the rules. Like if you're giving the quarterbacks a chance to slide, for example, like they can't pretend like they're not sliding and then slide and then get out the way. They can't do that. But that doesn't just go from I'm being consistent. That can't just go for Mahomes. That goes for any of these guys.
Oh yeah, it's universal.
I'm telling you, Joe Burrow's at the top of this list when it comes to protections from the referees and stuff. So I have very little sympathy when it comes to that.
I don't agree with that, but
And
Okay.
we're not here to.
The statistic that Tommy was talking about that I mentioned is that the Chiefs owner came out and said that ever since Taylor Swift has started going to the games, the Chiefs following has grown 30 to 40% since her being in the crowd. So that also
Money.
helps generate money. And it does.
Now I looked this up.
And now you got the three-peat coming, and that generates money. There's probably behind the scenes right now. There's probably the NFL tapes that are basically just following the Chiefs throughout this entire season. The 15-2 season. It's funny. I saw actually a little drop on FanDuel drop something that said the Chiefs are undefeated this year, and then it said at the bottom only one game lost in like very small print. And I was like, actually, so I commented on. I was like, guys, do you remember Week 18? You lost 38. What was it? 38-7. Yes, the starters weren't playing, but still, that's your record. So come on. Like
I think I just want to make two quick points, and then
should have been 8-9, but 15-2.
Yeah, and then we'll jump to the wide receivers. I just want to say that whatever other view. Could it be possible, like Tommy was saying, that the reason that there might be more viewers is not just because of Taylor Swift or whatever? Maybe it's the whole WWE thing. Well, we love to have a villain that we hate, right? We love to watch a villain fall. We wanted to see Ric Flair finally get his comeuppance.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Just play football. It's football.
There's that. But this is the main thing. And I know, Anthony, you and I have gone back and forth. It's that, are we suggesting, whether it's Roger Goodell or various NFL associates, are saying to referees, hey, if it's possible, keep it close to try to, to give them a call or two to try to make them win. I just want to be on. That's what you're saying is happening.
If it's possible,
and the reason that they're doing it is because of more money. That's what we're saying.
Billy, if it's possible, let me just say this. We all know there's holding on every single play, right? If Josh Allen throws for an 80-yard touchdown and there's no flags, there's a late flag that comes out after everybody's celebrating, and they go holding on the offense, and it's basically, fourth quarter, 7 minutes to go in the game, and they take a 14-point lead. You don't think that's gonna scratch?
No, people? I don't. But can I just mention, they barely won a lot of these games having nothing to do with penalties. They beat the Broncos on a fluke blocked field goal. They beat the Bengals on that last play of the game when the guy, that wasn't even close to not being a penalty, although everybody complained. He got there early. It was a pass interference, and then the Chiefs go win the game. They beat the Ravens in week 1 when Isaiah likely had a toe on the line of scrimmage. I think people don't like it because it's the fluky stuff on top of a bad call that they might happen to see, and they forget all the other teams that get one. And I'm still not buying into the idea that the NFL somehow is making more money by the Chiefs winning. I would argue that they would be losing more money when they have more parity. How many teams? They would have been better off having the Bills versus the Lions. right?
Let me ask you a quick. Let me ask you a quick question, and maybe you can provide an insightful answer
Yeah.
for this. So the spread for the game was 9.5, right? The Chiefs Texans.
Oh, I know what you're
The
getting at.
game was locked up. The game was completely locked up. There was no
Yeah,
way the Texans were going to
that's
win.
another one right there.
Okay, why are they running the play that they did at that moment? What was the reasoning? You think? How did that help him in any way?
It only took off. It only took four
Because
seconds
Yeah,
off the
yeah, and
clock too.
that's the other thing. It only took off very minimal seconds to impact the game.
I have an answer. Having personally been in a similar situation, played in college, because it's, again, you're taking a little advantage, but it's so small. But you went from
Bro.
having a punt that was able to be defended versus a free kick
Bro.
that was not going to be defended.
Bro.
It had nothing. And also, like, to that point, who would have taken the Chiefs and the spread? Who? They haven't covered a spread the entire year.
Bro.
What do you mean, bro? You're saying that the NFL went and talked to Andy Reid? Is that what you're saying?
I think we should move on.
No, I want that
This is
on record.
wild.
You're saying that Andy Reid had a financial interest in this.
No, I don't think Andy Reid had any financial
never said
interest, but I wouldn't be surprised if Vegas called up and said, "Hey, man, a lot of people bet this spread. We're going to lose a lot of money."
85% of people bet the spread on the Texans to cover. The other way.
But they didn't, though. And also, but one person made that call. That was Andy Reid. So you're saying Andy Reid got a call. That's what you're saying.
Picked up that red phone.
All right. I think I made my point.
Before we get into the 1 through 12, I just want to talk about some coaching opportunity.
Let's just get off that. People heard our points. They can make their thing. So
we can talk about it. We're going to be talking about it next week, most likely, if something fishy happens.
Yeah, let's mention some coaching. Go ahead, Tommy.
Yeah. So what the big one is Ben Johnson signing with the Bears. I think that's huge for that organization. I think that's also an interdivision right there. Coach going, the offensive coordinator going to become a head coach. I'm really hoping that it's not, for fantasy wise, I really hope it's not a Josh McDaniels going to Denver situation or Josh McDaniels going to the Raiders situation.
I don't think it will be.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it will be, but yeah, I don't think it will be, but we'll see. I mean, we'll see what happens in this offseason. I don't believe that Keenan Allen will be back next year. I think Keenan Allen, like I said a couple weeks ago, is going to be going back to the Chargers or potentially retirement. So we'll see with that. And then the other one is Mike Variable. And then obviously offensive coordinator Josh McDaniels is coming back to be an offensive coordinator there. One question about that one before we get into actual our segment. One question about that one right there is, do you think that they're just trying to reenact and reincarnate the same situation they had with Belichick, hiring a Mike Variable, and having a Josh McDaniels? I mean, he's basically was the offensive coordinator at that point right then and there.
It's a completely different roster. It's not nearly as close to being as good as.
I'm not talking about roster. I'm not talking about roster. I'm talking about coaching ethics.
No, I get it, but I still think that there's going to be a lot of work there. Do I think they're improved? Yes, I do. I still think they need a lot of improvement, though. I mean, as far as the roster shapeup goes,
yeah,
they had one of the best rosters you could ask for from top to bottom when Bill Belichick had that team.
Well, I mean, it molded into that. It wasn't the best roster when he got him. He had a mold that they molded that team.
Yeah, right, but I mean, they had guys that could fill out those positions, and I don't know, he just had a knack for turning guys into superstars. That's why they never re-signed players long term. It was very rare.
By the end of his tenure, Anthony, and this is, again, we just criticized. I think there's no greater criticism than you could throw on Tom Brady, that Tom Brady left the Patriots not for his own. He left the Patriots when the cupboard was bare. He basically, we all criticize LeBron for he left because I'm not going to be able to win with these yo-yos here anymore. So God forbid he would have stayed and actually proved that he could win without a good supporting cast. He didn't. He left. He went up and left. So I don't give Tom Brady credit for that, but we should equally, as much as we love Belichick, at that point,
Belichick,
he was at the end of his,
Yeah, well, Belichick, took him to the playoffs the next year with Cam Newton, right?
No, it took 2 years.
They made the playoffs. They made the playoffs the next year.
They did not make the playoffs the next year. It was the following year when they drafted Mac Jones.
Okay. There was 2 years.
Trust me, 2021 they went to the play. Anyway,
okay.
I will say this before leading into the receivers. There is one organization that has outshined the Jets as far as circus goes, and that is the Jacksonville Jaguars, who fired their GM today around 3:00 p.m. The funny thing about that, I don't know if you guys heard about this story. So basically, the Buccaneers offensive coordinator came in for the head coaching job. He was their favorite candidate. Basically, they offered him the job, and then this morning he ended up turning it down. They were shocked by that, and then they were shocked to find out that nobody wants to go there to coach because of their GM. So the owner of the Jaguars had a call with the GM on the call, by the way, and basically said to the public, "Hey, look, if there's a coach that can change my mind, I'll fire the GM." This guy was on the call while he said that, by the way, and then at 3 p.m. today he got fired. I don't think
something right out of Real Housewives. That's
yes, I don't think it gets worse than that. So it makes actually the Jets look like a decent team. But no, now Saleh is one of the favorite candidates to land that job out in Jacksonville.
Well, good for them. I still think Saleh was pretty okay. But yeah, we mentioned the Jets. So Anthony and I were briefly talking before we started recording. So we are, we're happy enough, I guess you could call it, with Aaron Glenn. We're annoyed in general that it's just another line in defensive coaches. We'd like to see an offensive-minded guy get in there. But if they were going to pick a defensive coach, I guess you could do way worse than Aaron Glenn. We like him. He was good in Detroit before his entire team fell apart, basically. But we'll wait and see what happens. Anthony, to your point, I'm always cautious on guys who are really, really good coordinators but might not be good head coaches, for example. So we'll see how he manages a team. We'll see who he brings in as a defensive coordinator and stuff.
I think what's exciting about him is he played for the Jets, obviously, so he has a background with them. He played under many different regimes while he was there as a player as well. I think he ended with the Parcells era. But the funny thing about Aaron Glenn is, so after he left football, this guy's actually a very intelligent guy. He ended up opening up 8 businesses. I think there were restaurants and chains. So he has a whole entrepreneurial side that he started after football and was very successful. And then he wanted to get back into football. And he had no, obviously, coaching experience whatsoever. He played the game. That's about it. So he's starting in the scouting department. And he worked his way up to the defensive coordinator and now to a head coach. So, this is a guy that's, kind of seen it all, done it all, and started literally at the bottom as far as the coaching tree goes. He wasn't just put into a position and said, here you go. He earned a spot, and I think he's deserving of this opportunity. I'm excited to see what he can do. And that being said, and I hate to even say this because Tommy, and you know how I feel about this situation, but at this point, I think Aaron Rodgers coming back is our best opportunity going forward next year. As much as I didn't want to see him on the team, it's just, you look at any other option out there, there's not many better options. And I want to see Glenn succeed in some capacity. You know what I mean? I'd hate for him to, we would be going to Tyrod Taylor, Jordan Davis, you maybe bring in Sam Darnold. It's a mess. So he's got a lot on his plate, and I think being in New York, me as a fan, you as a fan, we expect to see results right away because we're just so tired of losing. You know what I mean? But my expectation this year, I'm not expecting playoffs, but I would just be happy with a winning record. I think if we can achieve that and just have a winning record, even if we miss out on the playoffs, I'd be excited about that.
I agree with that. I just like to see some competitive. I'd like to see a team that fights, and you're right. We resigned ourselves, I guess it was about a month ago or two when we talked about it. Like Aaron Rodgers probably is our best option given the landscape where they're at, the pick that they're in, so we'll see. Hopefully they're competitive. And I hope him nothing but the best. We want to see we want to see it succeed, as critical as we are.
Right now, I'm just interested who they're going to bring in as the offensive coordinator. That's my biggest question mark right now, and I'm excited to see who they're going to bring in because that's also going to play a huge role going into the season.
Please let it be Cliff Kingsbury. It won't be, but it won't. So, cool. You guys ready to jump in?
Do it.
Yes, no more Jets.
All right. So let's jump into top 12 wide receivers. So we've already covered running backs 1 to 24. We're going to be covering in the next couple weeks running backs, wide receivers all the way 1 to 36, and then of course some honorable mentions today 1 to 12. And let's just jump right in here. So finishing at number 1, no surprise for everybody who had him. That's Ja'Marr Chase, finishing laps and fields ahead of everybody else. It wasn't even close in half-point PPR with 318.9 points, basically 50 points ahead of the number 2 guy. So, I mean, you drafted him as the wide receiver 4, and he double, triple, quadruple exceeded all your expectations. Unbelievable.
Yeah, but you also drafted him at the wide receiver 4 because there was a scarce on him signing his contract.
There was that, right?
Yeah, so like there was a big thing where people were pushing him off because of the fact. So like, a lot of people were able to grab him as like, a 7, 8 pick in the draft, and obviously turned out to pay off fairly nicely.
Yeah, he did not.
People with a later pick, and I ended up picking him number 1 overall in our draft. So, was I worried at first? A little bit, but I just felt like the talent was just too much to pass up given what was there.
Yep.
He had a phenomenal year.
It's one of these rare cases where you have a player who finished at number 1, played every single game, and had the highest average, like all in the same, he triple crowned it in the NFL. It was an unbelievable year. He started off weeks 1 and 2 were actually not the best, but basically every single week after that, he was unbelievable. I mean, I don't see a world in which he's not drafted the number 1 wide receiver overall for next year. Given that they're rolling it back, Joe Burrow. As long as you got Joe Burrow, that offense, Zach Taylor,
he's definitely But he's definitely the number 1 overall going into next year. I mean, in all reality, if you think about it, Joe Burrow and Ja'Marr Chase have been playing together. He's been in the league. Ja'Marr Chase has been in the league for what?
This was his 4th years? I think.
4 years? Yeah. So he's got as that pops up. But then you put in consideration, you play with him in college. So, they have that connection for over NFL, time. So it gives you that opportunity. He's definitely in the best position to be consistent, barring injury. He's definitely in the best position to, overproduce every single year.
I think going forward too, I think if I'm Ja'Marr Chase and I'm looking at the landscape of the NFL and quarterbacks especially, because I know his contract's coming up and that's his whole big thing, and getting an extension. And I think it's in his best interest to stay with the Bengals and play with Joe Burrow. I think that's his best opportunity to keep putting up these kind of numbers and having the success that he's having.
Yeah, right. I don't see him going anywhere.
Yep, he was good. Let's move to number 2. Coming in at number 2, we've got Justin Jefferson. Like I said, finishing about 50 or so points behind Ja'Marr Chase. I mean, you drafted him as the wide receiver 3, and he would have been higher probably if you didn't have this whole worry about obviously the quarterback situation with Sam Darnold. You didn't know coming in exactly what was going to be delivered to him. You were worried that he had the injury situation from the first half of the prior year. Nope, ho-hum, doesn't matter. Justin Jefferson goes out, crushes it. He's amazing, just like he was every year. It makes me feel better about him going forward, considering how bad Sam Darnold ended the year for the Vikings, and whether they continue with Sam Darnold or whether they go with J.J. McCarthy. Justin Jefferson is quarterback agnostic. It doesn't really matter. I'll be perfectly happy.
I wouldn't say Sam Darnold. I mean, Sam Darnold had a bad playoff. That's how he ended it bad. I mean, his
last game of the year against the Lions and then his wild card weekend against the Rams were just
last game. We're talking about week 18. We're not talking fantasy football here.
Well, I'm saying going
Yeah, but I
forward
mean,
performance wise. Yeah,
yeah, he still had a really bad game, and that game meant a lot too because they were fighting for the division.
right.
Yeah.
So he had opportunity to do something there.
Yeah.
I don't, I could see some other names on this list. I think given I might be interested in having over Justin Jefferson next year. But I guess we'll get into that more into the offseason. Tommy, did you have any worry about Justin Jefferson performing before the year?
He definitely was not the wide receiver one to be taken. That was my
Right.
only worry. Outside of that, he's Justin Jefferson. He's proven to be he has the best start out of all from rookie season to where he's currently right now, the best start. And he's kind of flip flop. He's obviously had Kirk Cousins, but Kirk Cousins hasn't he has his ups and downs as well. So, um, I don't see why he can't also be in contention for a number one pick next year. I mean, he's going to do it.
He's in contention for it, but he's not going to be connected to a quarterback like Joe Burrow, and
Again, you just look at like back in the day, DeAndre Hopkins, he had like 74 different quarterbacks and he finishes at like, top one, two, three every single year. I mean, he's literally the better version of DeAndre Hopkins in his prime right now.
yeah. Well, then it'll be interesting to see how the Vikings handle their quarterback situation
Yeah.
in the offseason. I can tell you that this will be an interesting conversation. I think I might prefer the guy who finished at number 3 next year. So Amon-Ra St. Brown coming in at wide receiver 3. You drafted him as the wide receiver 5. I mean, he was basically just Mr. Consistent throughout the year. I mean, he had maybe 1, maybe 2 games where he really blew up for you. But other than that, he was just consistent throughout the year, getting you good to great games throughout the whole year.
So you would take him over Ja'Marr Chase next year?
Over Ja'Marr Chase? No.
Okay.
Over Justin Jefferson, I would consider it. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's a consideration with that because of consistency ratio, but obviously, I think talent-wise, Justin Jefferson is light years ahead of Amon-Ra, to be honest.
Maybe. Don't let Amon-Ra let you hear say that.
I'm gonna be on his checklist then.
It has on his thing. If I should mention again, so Amon-Ra finished about 11 points behind Justin Jefferson, so not too far. So I mean, but in terms of total points, you have Ja'Marr Chase, who was up here, then basically Justin Jefferson and Amon-Ra, and then you have the other guys who we'll get into in terms of like how you tier list where the guys fell out. What's important to note about Amon-Ra St. Brown is that the way that their offense goes, he's going to get that's his role within the offense. That's why it's less boomer busty. And he's another example of they're going to keep Jared Goff. They're going to keep the same kind of system going. Obviously, both their offensive and defensive coordinator.
Did you just say are they going to keep Jared Goff?
I'm saying as opposed to the Vikings quarterback situation.
Gotcha.
Which is up in the air.
Gotcha.
Although it should be noted that the Lions just lost both their coordinators, so we'll see.
It's true. And I think that is the only thing that I'd be a little bit worried about going into next season. But in all reality, there are 2 players on that offense that are the prime star components to keeping that offense moving in the right direction. It's Jahmyr Gibbs and it's Amon-Ra St. Brown, and then you got obviously Montgomery behind that and Williams. There's
Laporta, right?
Yeah, I mean, again, you could just keep naming those guys down the list. The Lions the Lions are going to have to find a good offensive coordinator like they had with Ben Johnson. I mean, they're not going to I don't think they'll get to that level. But they'll have to find somebody that can basically still run that system of an offense.
Yep.
What's funny is that there's actually rumors going around that the Lions, are starting to look for a life after Jared Goff. He's 30 now, but the rumor is that they're trying to trade for Joe Milton, the backup of the Patriots.
Interesting.
Yeah, I guess they really liked what he saw in his last game playing against backups. But I mean,
where'd you find that?
I saw a report online. Obviously it's just rumors, but I mean, in all reality, though, Billy does have a point. You're going to have to start looking at life after golf and how that's going to affect that offense. I mean, he's not going to stay young forever, and who knows? Maybe the Lions at some point, if this guy can't get
I
over, winning the big games in the playoffs, something's got to change eventually too. And I
I
know,
mean, I think life after Goff, if he's 30 years old. I mean, we're talking maybe in 6 years we got to start thinking life after Goff.
yeah, but
Yeah.
you got to remember, it all depends on performance as well. I mean, if you're getting to the playoffs consistently, you can't win the game. I don't know.
Well, that's not true though. That's not true because, Aaron Rodgers had plenty of seasons where he just couldn't win that big game and he's still Aaron Rodgers. So,
Yeah, but statistically, Rodgers was a way better quarterback than what Goff was.
oh,
But
of
And then
course.
they had, like the Packers defense, was giving up 50 points to Arizona, or I mean, like, or a last second stupid pass to Russell Wilson. I mean, like, there was a lot of fluky crap in there. And then the nonsense that went. Don't get me started on the Tom Brady Tampa Bay NFC game. Don't get me anyway. Yeah, it was bad. It's not the same thing. And if you believe in life after Goff, then we have a plan for you. So says share. So it'll be interesting to see how they. I mean, I'll be interested to see their coordinators if I'm as interested. Although and also, Anthony, we didn't bring up. So Jared Goff, we'll get into him on the quarterback situation. But when Montgomery went down, Jared Goff became a lot better for fantasy, a lot more consistent. Now Amon-Ra's production didn't exactly adjust that much. It leads me to believe that his role is so much more entrenched in how the offense is. So maybe he's agnostic to whatever's going to happen with the offensive and defensive coordinators. So,
yeah, no, and I feel bad for Dan Campbell because he's the one that brought those two in with him when he got
yeah.
hired for that coaching job. But I'm sure he's also happy to see the people that he brought in succeed, and I can only see him wishing them well. So
I,
I'm sure they'll get some people to keep what they have going.
do you guys think that this is, ADP wise, do you think these are the wide receivers that go first in drafts next year in 2025?
Yeah,
I don't
I'm gonna
believe.
I'm gonna say there's gonna be one or two names that we'll mention that I think that'll creep into the top three.
I
Amon
think
Ra
there's,
always gets criminally disrespected and he'll
yeah.
get pushed down.
I feel the same way. There is one person that I feel like has to go before him, but outside of that, and we'll talk about him shortly. But outside of that, I think I think Amara kind of falls in the four spot.
Yep. So let's move on to what might be the biggest surprise, the biggest surprise on this list. So
Yep.
finishing at number 4, Brian Thomas Jr., rookie wide receiver for the Jacksonville Jaguars, finishing about 22 points behind Amon Ra. Tommy, you and I, we talked about this briefly right as the season ended. This was an unbelievable year for Brian Thomas. Completely out of nowhere. And I mean, as the season went on, he got better and better. I don't have the stat in front of me, but they had their bye week in week 12. Following their bye week, he was something like the wide receiver 2, and he basically won you your
Yeah.
championship. Week 15, 27 points. Week 16, 23 points. Week 17, 20 points. Unbelievable by Brian Thomas.
Yeah, I
Now,
mean, and then after their bye week, he was a touchdown machine.
it was unbelievable. So now, Anthony, I mean, Tommy and I already kind of had this little discussion right at the end of the year. It'd be interesting to get your opinion. So, I think Brian Thompson is going to be great next year. I think he might be a little bit overdrafted. And the logic is partially what Tommy said. He was a lot of touchdowns in there, but also because you had Christian Kirk went down. You had other guy, Gabe Davis. Gabe Davis goes down. You had
There was points in time where Evan Ingram was down.
Evan Ingram was down. Trevor Lawrence goes
Trevor
down,
Lawrence
and then
goes out.
Mac Jones is throwing caution to the wind, chucking it down the field to Brian Thomas. Am I right to be?
There's no coach there. There's no general manager there. It's a mess.
Am I right to be cautious about him next year? I think he's going to be overdrafted. How do you think?
100%. I'm in the same boat as you. I think he's definitely going to get overdrafted. He's someone I would, phenomenal rookie year and putting up the numbers that he did, but I would pursue with caution, especially because there's no sense of direction right now, with no general manager, no head coach. Trevor Lawrence is going to be playing good football. Or is it going to be back and forth between him and Mac Jones if Trevor Lawrence doesn't perform? So he's something. I'm probably not drafting him in the first round.
Yeah,
Well, I'm not going to draft him in the first round, but top 12 wide receivers, would you draft him? I mean, like we'll have to look at our rankings.
I think
but
unfortunately,
I wouldn't
he's
put him in
going.
my top 12 given some of these names and injuries that happened this year, to be honest with you.
I think unfortunately he's going to be ADP wise. He's going to be ranked as the number 8 or number 9 wide receiver to be taken.
I think you're right.
And I do not believe that his value is going to be there. I think he is a wide receiver 2 going into next year at the best.
Oh, well, I think he'll be I'll be satisfied with him as my wide receiver too.
I just don't. I don't think he's going to fall that way, but I think he's going to finish that way next year.
Yeah. By the way, we should just mention to people, just to reiterate. So we are checking their scores from week 1 to 17. We're not including week 18 here, and we'll make a note where there are average differences. But the last 4 guys that we've named, they've played every single game. So in a second, we're going to get into a guy who didn't play every single game. But I agree with both of you guys. I think, and Anthony, my point with Tommy was right at the end of the season was rookie wide receivers to me really outperformed, and it's going to raise the tide on the ADP of all rookie wide receivers next year. And it basically is going to mean that other than a guy that we're not even talking about today, might be the highest, to me, might be the best value in terms of who you draft. Some guy in Los Angeles. We'll get to him. We'll get to him next time. So let's move on to number 5 here. This will be interesting. So coming in number 5 is actually CeeDee Lamb. So CeeDee Lamb finishing about 14 points behind Brian Thomas Jr. So, I mean, we know the tale of the season. Dak goes down, I forget whatever week it was, 5, 6, or 7, something like that. They had Cooper Rush for the rest of the season.
Yep.
Doesn't matter. CeeDee Lamb still goes out and performs.
Well, yeah. I mean, CD was still targeted. He's the second highest targeted receiver in the league. 152 behind Jamar Chase at 161.
Right.
So that's the big thing. Now, catchable targets, 108 were catchable targets. So they were high. They actually was number 5. I think he was number 5 on catchable targets for the year. So that's huge. And if he had a better quarterback like a Dak Prescott, throwing the ball instead of it being Cooper Rush and Trey Lance at some point, I think that CeeDee Lamb would have surpassed some of these. He would have ranked higher at and with the touchdowns is what was needed as well. But he's the guy that I was saying earlier that I think that he's going to fall in the top 3. You're going to have your Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, and CeeDee Lamb. It's going to go back to normal what it was last year. Obviously, Hill was incorporated into that conversation, but I just don't see Hill having the same value unless he goes somewhere else. But again, with CeeDee Lamb's value comes from targets. Targets are king. CeeDee Lamb is that offense. He's going to roll, and he'll have a good season next year.
Yeah, that's what we're saying about the rankings. To me, next year, whether or not we agree with it, Jamar Chase will be number 1 in ADP, and it'll be some combination of Justin Jefferson or CeeDee Lamb as number 2.
Yep. You got 1A, and then you got 1B with basically Jefferson and CeeDee.
Yeah, and now that's why I'm saying it's interesting because I might prefer Amon-Ra than both of them personally, but I mean we'll get to that when we get to draft season.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
If you're number 3, and you're in a full point PPR, and Jamar Chase and Jefferson go, and you're not taking a running back, I really hope you're taking Amon-Ra.
So CeeDee Lamb, just a quick button on it. You drafted him as the wide receiver 2. He finished as the wide receiver 5. We kind of talked about this with Bijan. So that's fine. That's basically a range of that's tolerable for where you draft the guy. If you draft him at number 2, you're expecting anywhere from 1 to 5. So it is what it is. You just didn't expect him to get it there the way that he did without Dak and whatever.
Yeah, it was a grind. It was a grind.
Yeah. But he ended up doing it, and he didn't play the week 17, so he probably would have finished. He might have even finished higher than Brian Thomas, depending on how many points he would have got. Mm-hmm. So good year for him. All right, so let's get into a guy that I'm sure Tommy has a lot to talk about. So finishing at wide receiver 6, we've got Terry McLaurin. I hate his nickname, so I'm not going to say
Terry.
Yeah. So finishing at wide receiver 6, about 210 points, so just 2 or 3 points behind CD Lamb. You drafted him as the wide receiver 30. I think one of the best values in the draft for sure. Obviously, Brian Thomas was much better, but he played every single game. He was unbelievable. Go ahead, sing his praises, Tommy.
I mean, Jaden Daniels made him super relevant. I mean, past couple of years, Terry McLaurin was being targeted as basically a body catcher. He can only catch those deep balls by being a body catcher. I mean, Terry McLaurin took it off. He really took flight this year, and Jaden Daniels made him into turned him into an actual wide receiver that produces for the NFL. So I think Terry McLaurin is going to continue to be Terry McLaurin from this year moving forward because of his quarterback situation. He doesn't have Howell throwing the ball or whoever else was back there. I keep forgetting those guys. It was Heineke. He has Jaden Daniels, who has proven to be the best rookie quarterback, probably in, I don't
Ever.
remember.
Ever.
I don't remember outside of Andrew Luck. This is very, very, very special for the Commanders. And I think that Terry McLaurin, he's young. He's still young. I think he's like 26, 27, 29. So I mean, for wide receiver age, I mean that's 26, 27 for running backs. Um, so he's in his prime, and I think that this is going to be very, very valuable. And I think that they're going to take another wide receiver in the draft this year, most likely, to back it up. But I think Terry McLaurin is going to continue.
Anthony, I got a question for you here. You tell me if my logic is right. Let's assume that regardless of what happens in the playoffs here, let's assume that the Commanders don't win the Super Bowl, so whether they lose the NFC Championship or the Super Bowl. And let's assume that they keep Cliff Kingsbury and obviously Dan Quinn, obviously. Now, on the surface, I'd be like, listen, they got all this consistency. Jaden Daniels is unbelievable. It's only going to be more of the same, or maybe even better next year for their offense, right? We all thought the same thing for Houston, right? We all thought that CJ Stroud was great as a rookie. And for fantasy purposes and in the real NFL, complete regression the following year, this past year here. They had the same head coach and the same offensive coordinator. If we remember Bobby Slow, it was like a head coaching candidate, but they kept him. Is this a completely different situation? Jay Daniels just a different cat. The way they do things is different, or am I right to be a little worried about that as a comparison?
I think you're right to be worried. As the great example you just provided with the Houston situation, but I also think that there is some level of consistency there that wouldn't scare me. Meaning, if Nico Collins didn't get hurt, I think he still would have put up some good fantasy numbers this year, and I think
Oh
he
yeah.
would have been what you drafted him to be, even though CJ Stroud did regress. I don't think that really would have impacted Collins that negatively in a fantasy perspective, if that makes sense. Because he had
So
some good games when he came back off his injury, and I think it's going to be the same thing with McLaurin. So even if Jaden Daniels does regress a little bit, I think McLaurin's still the number one guy there, obviously. And I think they're going to look to continue to feed him the ball. Um, I mean, you hope that it gets better from here, but they just made it to the NFC Championship. So I guess, we'll put in perspective if they do end up winning the Super Bowl. So how does it get better from there? Now you go for another one. So he's had a tremendous season this year. I always expect regression no matter what. And because now you've played an entire year, so now you give defenses a chance to figure out your style of play, how to stop you. There's a lot of film on you now. Remember, that's one of the things that's funny, and I use this example all the time. There's certain quarterbacks in the league that have success immediately, right, when they start playing. And it's because there's no film on them. There's nothing really to prepare you, and you
this
kind
is a
of just
good
take it
point.
as it goes. So I think with the good thing about the NFL and what makes teams so good is you start to prepare, you lock in, and it could have been the same thing with CJ Stroud. Hey, we're just going to figure this guy out a little bit. How do we stop him?
Yep.
Focus in on that. Um, but I see him putting up some good numbers next year too, and I don't think there's going to be much regression for Terry McLaurin going into next season.
I
Yeah,
hope
but you
so,
know what?
man.
It goes in respect for the other way around too, because the smart quarterback learns what he did in his rookie season. And every single year he adapts to basically mature his game. So I think C.J. Stroud was content. Not saying that he didn't prepare for the 2024 season. I think that when you start putting pieces around people, sometimes they get a little bit more content. They kind of take a step back, and it is just is what it is. And I think Jaden Daniels wants to win. And not saying that CJ Stroud doesn't want to win. I just think that um, they have a great talent, and he's in a winning culture
I
now.
wonder if, like, I don't want to spend too much time on it, but I actually asked my brother about, like, we were talking about possible keepers for next year, and I know that Jaden Daniels is like, I have an option to keep him next year, and I was kind of broaching the subject with him, and my brother's logic was, you got to remember, for a guy like C.J. Stroud, his rookie year, like he got drafted onto the worst team. They had the easiest schedule, but then after they go and win after they finish first in division, then they have the hardest schedule. The Commanders had the easiest schedule this past year versus now they're going to have a harder schedule next year. It's worth keeping in mind. And everything that Anthony said, I couldn't agree with you more. You give people time to catch up. The NFL will catch up. I
Oh no,
mean,
100%. And
I
here's the
mean,
funny thing. We're talking about this from a fantasy perspective, right? If you look at it in terms of actual NFL perspective, CJ Stroud still made the second round of the playoffs. So
yes, that's true.
even though he regressed in a fantasy perspective, he was still good enough to make the playoffs
This is fair.
and win. And they beat the Chargers. So, you look at it in a perspective like that, even a down year from him fantasy wise, still good enough to second round of the playoffs.
If Terry McLaurin is drafted as like lower, like I could see Terry McLaurin. I'd be happy with him as my wide receiver one next year. I would. So it'll be interesting to see how far up or down than the ADP he is. We'll judge that in the offseason to see if it's worth it or not. Um, let's move on to another interesting name here. Finishing at number 7 is Malik Neighbors, another rookie wide receiver, sensation for the New York Giants, target machine, finishing about 6 points behind Terry McLaurin. You drafted him as the wide receiver 24, finished as the wide receiver 7, and he even missed 2 games. So his average is much higher than actually the last couple guys we named. He plays those games. Who knows? Might have finished up at the wide receiver 4. So an unbelievable value. Basically on the back of just endless targets. That's why we preach volume all the time when we look at targets are king, right? We talked about it the whole year. And not just targets too. It's good targets, not targets that are out of the out of the stratosphere from like whoever we're looking at it. Yeah. Tommy, as the resident Giants fan here, is this more of the same next year? Is this just maybe the targets are going to get better? Does it all depend on what they draft or who they bring in? What do you think here?
I mean, he's the only guy there. He's literally they are revolving an offense around him. So I mean, whoever is put there, doesn't matter if it's Tommy Cutlets or if it's Drew Lock, or if they decide to bring back Daniel Jones because they're such a dysfunctional team, and pay Daniel Jones more. Who knows? But no, I think he's a product of what he is. I mean, just look at it. LSU University is a wide receiver university
Yes.
lately, for the past 5, 6, 7 years. So, let's look at that, and let's say that Malik Neighbors will be a top 12, pretty consistent top 12. Bearing injury, I think he's going to have a fantastic year next year. Targets are king.
Yeah. I'll be slightly less optimistic depending on what they got to do. Something they have to do something.
I will say, and again, just to back it off as well too. What week 17 is what really put him in the number 7 spot right there. If you look back, I think he was number 10 or 11, which is still fantastic for his ADP, and for a rookie wide receiver. But that week is what people won championships off of that.
Right. I'll tell you this. Yeah, sorry. Go ahead, Anthony.
The one thing that worries me about him is he's such a talented player, and and the sky's the limit for him. And I hope it doesn't turn into like an Odell situation where the quarterback play just becomes too inconsistent. Now you got a guy that just turns into a head case, and he's made his frustrations clear throughout this year too about the quarterback play. And people like that, you love their mentality because they're there to win. They want to put up stats and they
He
want to
actually,
win
it wasn't
well.
about the quarterback play; it was about the coaching.
Coaching, yeah, I mean,
Whatever
but
it
you
is, yeah.
still, you still need a consistent quarterback, which is something the Giants obviously don't have at this point. Um, and he kind of was vocal about Shador Sanders getting drafted to the Giants when that was rumored, and didn't seem like he was too much of a fan of that, starting with a
And
rookie
neither am
quarterback
I.
all over again. Yeah, and I get it. So like to your point, Billy, hopefully they can get someone in there and kind of figure out that situation and let
Well,
him run wild in fantasy.
I will say this, and this is just speculation on my end, based on what we got going out there. But there's two names that I believe that could be fairly good for the New York Giants based on, uh, basically they've been in the league for a number of years and, journeyman kind of situation. It could be,
Here we
like if
go.
Aaron Rodgers doesn't pan out in the New York Jets uniform, I think he stays in New York. He gets signed by the Giants or Kirky Cousins.
Right.
And I think both of those situations are fantastic situations for Malik Neighbors.
I think you're right about Captain Kirk. I was looking at it, Captain Kirk. I feel like it's autumn. It's going to happen at this point because the Giants are not going to grab Cam Ward and after the Shadir Sanders situation, so they're not going to get Ward. They're not going to get Sanders. They got to have somebody.
You know
So
what
they're
they're gonna
probably.
get? Justin Fields.
Oh boy,
Ugh. A
it'll
guy
be
that
worse.
can't
It'll be
throw the
worse for
ball.
neighbors. I'll reserve. Anthony, I'm going to reserve my judgment on neighbors' commentary until more into the offseason. I want to see. We have to see what they're going to do.
Yeah, it's hard
Because
to talk about his ADP going into next year, and we got to figure out what their offensive situation is going to look like and see who they draft too. That's
I
another.
mean, I do believe he'll finish in the top 12. Let's just put it that way. I mean,
I
do you agree?
I don't
I
think that's
agree
the
with
fault.
that. I agree with that.
I don't. I think that I don't see how the quarterback situation could get any worse. So I would, yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
low end wide receiver one
Yeah. So he's a,
as a
he's a wide
floor.
receiver.
Yeah,
Yeah, he's a wide receiver one based on, targets. They
right.
have their scripted plays for his, for him to
I
get the
could
ball.
name I could name about 9 to 10 guys I'd rather have than him. So there you go.
Yeah.
So
He's top
low
12.
end wide receiver one. All right, let's go to the next guy. Another gigantic surprise. So finishing at number 8 is Jackson Smith and Jigba, finishing with 199 points, is about 5 behind Malik Neighbors. Drafted as the wide receiver 40. I think it's like even an afterthought. Like he was, he did not have that good of a rookie season. He's coming in, behind the alpha wide receiver DK Metcalf. Nope, doesn't matter. Now's my breakout year. He goes and crushes it. Has an unbelievable year. Um, basically usurping everything from DK Metcalf, and
Yeah.
obviously now Tyler Lockett. He's an afterthought at this
He,
point,
he reaped the benefit of a busted DK Metcalf.
right? Or maybe DK Metcalf was, he's the beneficiary of Metcalf taking, like a lot of coverage away. I mean, looking at some of the plays, I know that Metcalf was injured for a lot of the year too. I know you were very critical of him, but to me, this is the younger guy. This is the guy that had a breakout year. Now Seattle, we're not sure exactly how they're
Explain,
going to be
explain
rolling.
to me injured.
Well, he was injured, and then he looked like he was playing through some injury. He was in and out of the tent, that your favorite thing in the whole wide world, that whole business. So
Yeah.
I mean, we don't know exactly, and they were keeping it close to the vest. Ian Rappaport was saying how that there's no info coming out of it. If they roll with Geno again, and they have the same. Again, this is another example. If they roll with Geno and they roll with the same situation, why not more of the same from Jackson Smith and Jigba, right? Like,
So I think you're right, but a part of me, when this is all hypothetical now, but I'm actually not surprised that Jackson had the year that he did this year. I thought he was going to do it last year, to be honest with you, and he didn't. And I think it, definitely
it burned
disappointed a
people.
lot of people. Um, so it was great to actually see him provide on that this year. Now that also leads me to believe that I think that DK Metcalf is now the perfect trade candidate for the Seahawks. And I think that's good that there's a good possibility he could get traded to another team next year, and that's going to obviously boost Smith and Jingba to the number one slot there.
Well, I think that actually, I mean, yeah, that's good there, but I think what really helped his production also was, DK being on the field and Lockett being on the field, and I think that's what really helped his production. So I just don't see this repeating into next year if that's the case.
So then you're giving credence to the thing that Metcalf might have been taking some attention away.
Well,
So
he
then-
definitely was taking attention away.
Right.
I mean, but DK, he was horrendous.
Yeah.
Injury or not, I mean, he was definitely taking attention away from, to assist with his production.
Put it this way: if I'm the Los Angeles Chargers, I'm picking up the phone and calling the Seahawks, saying, "Hey, what's up with Metcalf?"
I mean, I don't think that Mr. Coach over there would actually go with that. I think Mr. Coach over there, because I can't for some reason pronounce his name. Harbaugh. Whatever. Harbaugh. Yeah, I can't see him. I mean, they traded away Keenan Allen in the beginning of the season. Maybe Keenan Allen, woke up and he was like, "Hey, listen, like I could play with this guy. I just got to clean up my stuff. I can't be, so diva-ish."
Oh, and the Seahawks can look at it too, as they see what they have in Smith and Jigba. He's obviously the younger version, not as beat up as DK Metcalf. I mean, Metcalf seems to be getting hurt pretty consistently now too, so it's a serious consideration to say, hey, we have a pretty solid one receiver in Smith and Jigba. Let's see maybe what we can get for Metcalf, and maybe
It's new coaching too over there.
Yeah, maybe they look to draft another receiver too, because Lockett's on his way out. I mean, I think he's kind of past his prime at this point. He was great for a while, but Tommy was right. I think Smith and Jigba playing out of the slot definitely helped him a lot to improve his game this year, and I think that's where he's most successful. So we just have to kind of wait and see what happens next year.
I just for funniness. Some of this is in the vault of my favorite pronunciations by Tommy. The Harbaugh, Mike Vrabel, so Varble, whatever, Hardball. And then my favorite one throughout the whole year, rookie wide receiver for the San Francisco 49ers. Rookie wide receiver for the San Francisco 49ers.
Ricky Pearsall.
Now you say it right. Ricky Parcell.
Ricky Purcell.
All right, let's jump to number 9 here. Finishing at number 9, we've got Drake London. Finishing a couple points behind Jackson Smith and Jigba. You drafted him as the wide receiver 11, finished as a wide receiver 9. You got exactly what you needed out of him. Now, you did not, it was not as good a year as you would have expected for the Atlanta Falcons, but he came through in the way that he did. And then what's most interesting about this is he performed just about the same with Michael Penix. Maybe a pinch less with Michael Penix as he was with Kirk Cousins, which is encouraging for next year. Hopefully Penix only improves. And at least, go ahead.
He will. He will improve. Drake London is going to, have the year next year that he should have had this year with Kirk Cousins next year.
Here's a good. Who would you take? Forget ADP just for right now. Who would you rather have next year, Malik Neighbors or Drake London? It's probably a great question.
I'd probably take Malik Neighbors, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I still have to take Malik.
I think I would want to see what they do in the off season. Right now, I would take London if I had to do a best ball or something. Yeah, we'll see. Not too much else to mention about London. It'll be Penix going forward. The Atlanta Falcons are going to be better with him, and we'll see more of the same next year. All right, this will be a good one. So finishing at number 10, we've got Garrett Wilson, star happy wide receiver for the New York Jets. So finishes a point
to
behind.
Be determined.
Finishes only 1 point behind Drake London, and Wilson played every single game. So like his average is it's not like he missed a few games. No, that's where he finished. You drafted him as the wide receiver 7. Anthony, like he didn't kill you, obviously. Like you drafted him as the wide receiver 7, finished at 10. But I mean, you really drafted him for upside. You were hoping he finishes in the top 5, top 3, with the whole hopes of the Aaron Rodgers world that completely crashed around us. I guess it's entirely dependent on if Aaron Rodgers comes back next year, or is this going to be, like he was fine with Zach Wilson kind of. How do you see Garrett Wilson?
I mean, I look
Barely.
at it like I mentioned earlier. I think his best opportunity is going to come from Aaron Rodgers coming back next
Yep.
year. And that's also if Devontae Adams stays, because that definitely helps him out a lot as well, because it takes a lot of attention off him. And he's not getting double teamed as much. Yeah, I definitely thought he was going to finish in the top five with a healthy Aaron Rodgers this year. He was actually one of the guys I thought was for sure going to blow his ADP out of the water. But it was very clear watching the games they weren't on the same page either, especially in the beginning of the year. And I think that grew to Wilson's frustrations as well, because I think he had high expectations for himself and the season, and they got off to a very slow start. This first four games were not the greatest, and then
Right.
his next took him to game five to finally get on track and get it going. So there was rumors where they said that he was looking to ask for a trade going into next season. Multiple sources reported that. That's something that I would say that doesn't surprise me. It's almost like we talked about the Malik Neighbors situation, where if Rodgers doesn't come back, he doesn't want to start with a rookie quarterback. A lot of these guys don't and want to have to deal with it and go through the process again. And they just want to get fed the ball, they want to put up numbers, and they want to get a payday. And I don't blame them. You come to the league to be the best, to get paid, and to earn your paycheck, and I think Wilson's seen it as well. Look, I played with Zach Wilson. That was terrible. Aaron Rodgers didn't really go as I expected, but I think his best shot is with Rodgers next year. And if Rodgers is back, man, I don't even know if I'd consider drafting him in the top 12. I'm being honest with you.
I'm so with you.
I'd have a hard time, especially after this year with Rodgers back, drafting Garrett Wilson in the top 12.
I got to be honest. I probably would take Garrett Wilson over Malik Neighbors next year if that's the case.
Ooh.
I don't know, man.
We'll have to.
Time. I mean,
we'll have to see the situation, but
you have guys out there.
No. What I'm saying is, if Rodgers comes back, and I think Rodgers will be a world beater next year if he comes back, because he'll be healthier than he was this year. He looked healthier as the season went on.
Oh, from your lips to God's ears. But I mean, we're trying to be realistic about this.
I am being realistic. If that injury, maybe the healing process didn't heal, to what he expected.
Maybe.
We also have to wait and see who the offensive coordinator is going to be, and if Devontae Adams is going to stay or not. That's also another thing too that we have to.
I mean, if Rodgers is there, they're paying Adams for a year.
Yeah, I mean, I see that too, but I mean, there's guys on that list. Looking at Wilson, I'd probably take Chris Godwin over him. I'd probably take Rashee Rice over him. Those guys that got hurt had their season ended, and
I wouldn't say Chris Godwin, because there's a guy we're not talking about today that has usurped that role. We'll get to him.
Yeah, because Chris Godwin might find himself on another team next year.
He might find himself on another team, but yeah, Anthony, I wouldn't draft him in the top 12. I wouldn't personally. A lot of these names Chase, Jefferson, Brown, some of the rookies, some guys that we haven't even named yet. McLaurin. I mean, these guys I'd rather have than Wilson. It's just you don't need that risk.
I would draft him in the top 7.
Okay. So then that means you draft Malik Neighbors at like wide receiver 8 then.
Mm-hmm.
Ish. Okay. Yeah, I agree. So let's talk about a different guy, which I think this is an interesting point. So finishing at number 11 here is Mike Evans. So he did not play for 3 games. So his average is significantly higher. Now he finished at 190 points, about 4 points below Wilson. Now, the first half of the year that he played was the definition of inconsistent. 20 points, 5 points, 2 points, 20 points, 20 points, 4 points, 9 points. Then he didn't play for a while. But when he comes back from the bye after the 3 game that he missed, he really was great to close out the rest of the year. Now, in my opinion, he cannot just keep rolling on with the idea that, well, he's just going to get shoved targets to get him to 1,000 yards at the end of the year to hurry him up. He's going to get another year older. You have the emergence of other guys on that offense. It's Baker's team. I mean, like, yeah, I can't. I think this is the end.
No, I don't think it's the end. I think
really.
I think. He has another 3-4 years, to go, to be honest. Mike Evans, he's such an amazing talent. Honestly, I will tell you this. If he played the entire season like the rest of those guys in the top top 5, top 6 did, he would have finished top 4. He would have finished at number 4.
Maybe that's what he was on pace for. Yeah, but
I mean, he would have finished. I'm telling you right now, he might have finished above St. Brown, which is fantastic for his ADP.
Part of what drives his ADP down is that he's going to miss some time. I mean, you drafted you drafted him as the wide receiver 15 this past year. You got the wide receiver 11, but to Tommy's point, it felt better than that if you could manage through the weeks that he didn't play. But like we could have a differing of opinion. I think this is the last year of his dominance. Let's call it. He'll still be relevant, but
I think his ADP is going to stick at around 15, 16 for next year. I think it's going to be a consistent thing. But he's going to overproduce his ADP.
So then he'll be on a lot of your teams then, if you believe that. So
I tried plugging him every single league this year, but it just got swept in front of me. To be honest, I mean, he's one of those players that you would love to be able to wait to make him your your wide receiver 2 because of his ADP. But somebody always takes him. Somebody always sweeps him up before, and it just it's over. Like last year, I think his ADP was 25 because you didn't know what was going to happen with Baker. This year was 15. So and he overproduced last year as well. Which I was actually really surprised that his ADP coming into the season was 15. Because he is the wide receiver 1 over there.
Well, because people were wondering if Godwin was going to take over more if Baker continues his thing. Like it was.
I get it.
There's a bunch of questions involved there.
I get it, but you know what? But still, Mike Evans is the bigger target compared to Godwin. Godwin has always been that slot-esque kind of receiver. Mike Evans is that touchdown maker for that Baker.
All right. Let that slide. I should mention, like I was kind of alluding to it. I have like one of my favorite fantasy football players this year is now the wide receiver 2 in Tampa, Jalen McMillions. We'll talk about him, not today, but like I think that might have been him overtaken, basically, is my point in and obviously the emergence of the running back situation, Bucky Irving, etc. I mean, it'll be interesting to see. You and I could have a differing of opinion. I'll say this though, to your point, if his ADP ends up being in the low end or mid range wide receiver 2, and you think he's going to finish top 12, you just grab him everywhere if that's what you think. I mean, argue with what you don't have. All right, let's talk about coming in at wide receiver 12. This will be really good, Anthony. So coming in at wide receiver 12. Judge Jerry Jeudy himself, finishing with 186 points, just 4 points behind Mike Evans. Basically an afterthought, not drafted, whatever. I mean, we have the wide receiver 56 here, but I mean, it was basically not drafted, the millionth round or whatever. So, Anthony, you want to take it away? Talk about Mr. Famous Jameis here. I mean,
going into next year, he's still going to be probably a 5th round pick for me, 6th. I'm not looking at him in the top rounds.
Well,
he had a great end of his year, and that's, I think, partly due to Jameis Winston and throwing the ball 50 times a game, and then Tillman going down. But kudos to him. He ended up finishing in the top 12. It actually takes skill to do that. But their quarterback situation is such a mess. We don't know who's going to be the quarterback for them. It's one of those things that just maybe a wide receiver 3. I mean, I think you draft him next year. In a lot of leagues, he wasn't drafted at all last year. I think you draft him this year for sure to maybe start him in your flex, but it's going to have to be a wait and see situation for me. And how that organization shapes out. I mean, is Nick Chubb going to come back to full strength next year too? You have Tillman back, who will be healthy.
I don't even know. I don't even think it matters. But if Nick Chubb comes back next year, to be honest, it just depends on who's the quarterback throwing the ball there.
Yeah,
they might tank it. Who knows? They might tank it and try to grab a quarterback in 2026.
Or they grab Kirk Cousins. Who knows? I don't know.
I really hope not. Honestly, though, but I will tell you this: there's 2 players on this list that we discussed tonight that I do not believe will not fall in the top 12 for next year, and that's JSN, Jackson Smith and Njigba, and Jerry Judy.
I think we all agree on Judge Judy for sure.
Yeah, and I think the reason behind that is because not only just the quarterback situation, but he's just not he's had his games. Like, yes, did he have a great end of season? Yes, but he had his games where he just was scoring, minimal points. It could be 2, 4, 2 points, and it doesn't that's not wide receiver one. That's not what you want to bank on with your wide receiver one. You can't if he's a wide receiver two, if he was most likely your wide receiver 3, 4, 5, or 6 this year because of not being drafted. There's going to be plenty of players out there that you can really go out and get, and that can be that the person that Jerry Judy for next year. Last year was Puka Nacua, basically was that guy, right? So there's always going to be that guy that's going to fall in line with the top 12 or fall at 12 itself, that nobody would have ever thought, and that this year is Jerry Judy.
I agree. I know we'll disagree, but we're all in agreement on Jerry Judy. There's no way he finishes this high next year.
No.
I mean, it would take a miracle with whatever their quarterback situation goes on. It was good while it lasted, because basically from week 11 through week 15, he was the wide receiver 2 or something. It was it was unbelievable. So, but those times are gone. So, hopefully they figure something out, or that they're probably just going to be bad to eat one more year of Deshaun Watson's awful contract, the worst contract in sports. It's the Bobby Bonilla of contracts is how bad it was. So,
I don't even see how he plays next year. It's like,
right.
Ruptured his Achilles, same Achilles again. I mean, I think
No, he's not playing next year.
I think
he's most likely out.
I'm being honest with you. At that
point. Remember I said a couple weeks ago, I said they have the option to get him out of there. There's that injury clause. There's a couple different clauses in there. I think really he's done. They're going to get their money out. They're going to get their money out, and they're going to have to pay him some, but they're not going to have to pay him $400 billion that they have projected. Maybe with interest with the Bobby Bonilla deal they're going to have to put together. They might have to pay him a little bit more, on interest, but I think that they're moving on. They need to move on. They made a mistake, just like the Giants. They made a mistake and move on.
Yeah, it was a much more costly mistake, to be honest. I don't know how I don't think they can get out of it the way you're saying, but maybe I'm wrong. We'll see. So there we go. That's wide receivers 1 through 12. Next time we'll get into wide receivers 13 through 24, and then we'll go 25 through 36, and then honorable mentions. Got a lot of interesting guys to talk to next time, especially. Closing thoughts, gentlemen?
You got anything? Right.
Yeah, I'm excited for this weekend's matchups. Can't wait to have this discussion next week after we see what unfolds and how things unfold. And as always, thank you guys for your support and tuning in. Keep watching, and we're going to continue to put out as many videos as we can.
Yeah. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. Definitely. Like, subscribe, share. Get your mothers involved, get your fathers involved, get your grandparents involved, anybody to get involved. We love our fans, and everybody. Just keep dropping those comments. Like everybody said, we do have a lot of stuff that's planned for the rest of the off season, and we're going to get everybody prepared for the 2025-2026 fantasy football season. But if there's anything you guys want us to talk about, just drop them in the comments, and we'll speculate and put something together.
Yes, sir. Cool. All right. Thank you very much, everybody.
All right. Good night.
Good night.